No Adam today.
No Adam.
Oh, man.
Man, I'm sure going to miss all that feedback from his terrible headset. It's going
to... It's an ongoing shtick.
It won't be the same. Yes. Indeed. What's up, Jared? Is it Easley? Is that the right way to pronounce your last name?
Like Sunday morning. That's right.
Jared.
Easley like Sunday morning.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. Well, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you. Thanks for coming on. I know you're probably
I'm humbled.
Super slammed. Oh, well, don't be. I'm sure, you know.
on a Monday evening, it's at 6:40 Eastern. Yeah, it's brutal. I had to clear, a number of things. So,
well, I mean, all jokes aside, you probably are incredibly busy. You've got the,
things
podcast movement coming up. That takes a lot of time and effort for sure. So, so for those of you who don't know who Jared is, he is one of the co-founders of Podcast Movement, which is basically the FUBU of the podcast industry. It's for podcasters by podcasters. Formed in 2014 off an $11,000 Kickstarter that was hit in 24 hours. Am I getting this right so far?
Actually, that's a good memory. Yeah, it ended up being more than $11,000, but yeah, you're right. We did hit that in one day, which I don't know how that was possible because we were not connected or influential at all. So, but yes.
Well, I don't know. I would have to disagree. If you hit it in 24 hours, you must have done something right.
Well, Dan, who's my business partner, Dan Franks, and I, we had started a podcast in 2013, not together, but we had our separate shows, and then we had made some contacts in kind of the podcast space from having guests and stuff. So really that was we didn't have an email list or anything. We just contacted people who had been on the show or people who had supported the show and said, will you speak at this? Will you come to this? Will you share it out? And so really that's kind of a testimony of the power of podcasting, at least at that point, was we were very new and didn't have any influence. I mean, I'm not just saying that to be humble. Like we really didn't. We didn't have an extensive email list. We didn't have basically the things that someone would say you need to have a successful crowdfunding campaign. But we were creative and we did work hard to contact the people that we had been in touch with for that year. Leading up, on our shows, and those people were gracious and supported it, and that's how we kind of got the ball rolling. But as we can laugh about it now, just because you kind of start something doesn't mean you know how to run it or maintain it or build it. And so it took a good 4 years to really figure that out. And there was, by the way, there was no pay in those 4 years. So imagine working a full-time job, and then on top of that, working another full-time job that didn't pay you. Some people, get it, and then there's other people that are like, well, that's not for me. And my wife wasn't real happy about that season. But we did survive it, and we moved beyond it. And I'm thankful that we are where we are now. But it took a lot.
Wife's got to be a lot happier
sweat
now
equity.
with the
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's become the biggest global event for podcasting, right?
I think in person, that's fair to say. I mean, there's other events that have claimed to have a crazy number of virtual attendees, and that I don't know about all that. But what I do know is, for in person, everybody from the independent, the person that's wanting to start out or has started, and then you got the veterans, and then you got the industry folks that are all combined. And I personally think that's something that the podcast space was lacking for a long time. And so it's neat to see that those circles overlap. And there'd be some people that argue and be like, well, what could an independent really learn from somebody who's, got this network behind them? Well, actually a lot, there's a number of things that work well for these groups, and you can still pick up bits and pieces. One of my favorite stories from a podcast movement was a lady who's pretty respected and well established in the bird watching community, which is a thing. I'm not into that, but that's her thing. And she had come to the event, and I asked her, I was like, what session did you go to that you felt was meaningful and helpful? And I assumed she was going to, say like an obvious type of keynote or, a big speaker type of session. She's like, oh, the best session was the wrestler guys. And I kind of laughed at that. She's like, the wrestler guys were talking about how they, do live events and how they monetize and how they, engage. And I just kind of, for a second, was kind of laughing at the idea of where does the bird watcher, overlap with the wrestler like that. That probably doesn't happen in most spaces, but that's happening in podcasting. So, I love that. And that's true too, with like political lines and, gender roles and, sexual orientations and religion and just all these different, things where certain groups probably wouldn't hang out or agree or want to be around each other, but they would in a podcast space, which is pretty neat. And it's not always perfect, but for the most part, the community's collaborative and synergistic. And I think that's true across the board, not just in podcast movement. So,
yeah, I mean, it's a great event for sure. I was able to go in 2019, I guess the last one before the world, came to a halt in Orlando, and it was really just a well-run operation and just so much going on, so much information and so many awesome people to meet and opportunities to network, and it was just really well produced. Marcus and I are both from the music industry background, and so we both worked and thrown large events, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, honestly. But I'm really glad that someone's doing it, because it's just so much work. I mean, I know there's a few, She Podcast Movement, Podfest Global, you guys are kind of like the pinnacles, the totem poles of the industry, if you will. So
the big events to be seen at every year. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at flights right now, from Costa Rica, which is like not cheap, you know what I mean? But I'm just glad it's not in Orlando. No offense to Orlando, but,
right.
Nobody wants to spend $1,000 to fly to Orlando. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Disney's horrible. Why would you go there?
Well,
no, Nashville's good. Nashville's a fun city. We're going to have a good time. So
yeah,
my backyard, coming to my town.
Exactly.
That's right. Everybody wants to see Marcus, and rightfully
That's
so.
right. That's why you chose Nashville, right? It's because I'm here.
Yeah, the only reason.
Standing room only. Honestly, it's gonna be amazing. So I've been thinking about podcast movement and kind of what it means, and so I was thinking, when I used to throw events, I always had the inside track on how people should get things done. So I was thinking, like, if you had one piece of advice to give somebody who's coming to podcast movement, whether it's for a day or for all 3 days or whatever it is, like, what is your like, not just survival tip, but like, what's your pro tip? Like, what's the best way to experience podcast movement?
That answer can be subjective depending on what someone's focus and their priorities are. But I think a safe answer is probably take a look at the schedule ahead of time. If you're just there for that one day, kind of pick and choose what is a priority for you, and then specifically make time for the hallways and the exhibit hall, because as you know, a lot of the really good value of an event is who you meet and the conversations that come from that. And so I say, there's a lot of introverts that come to podcast movement, and they can be a little shy that first day, and that's completely fine. I can relate to that on some level, but for the most part, people are very gracious and want to meet you, and they want to talk to you, and they are interested in what you're doing, and they want to share opinions on, hey, have you tried this? And this might be something that is helpful for the issue that you're running into. And so I think that's probably the thing that I would encourage someone to consider is just take a look at the schedule, kind of map out what you want to do, and then specifically set aside some time where you can interact and you can go through the exhibit hall, or you can meet people in the hallway. And if you're having a really good conversation and you're about to go to a session, it might make sense to just continue that conversation, just check out a replay of the session later. We have ways for people to do that. So don't feel like, okay, I can't continue this conversation. I really need to go to this session. Sometimes that is what you should do, but then there's other times when, maybe right now you just need to make that contact and just talk to somebody. And you never know where those connections go. There's friendships that I've got now for, almost 10 years from events that I've gone to, and that was the case. Just had a really good, meaningful chat with them in the hallway, and now we're buddies, or we're somebody that I have done business with, or somebody that I've referred business to. So it's kind of fun, and I hope people will give themselves that flexibility. So be flexible, be intentional, but be flexible, I think is reasonable advice. Yeah.
I know in 2019, I was fortunate enough to get chosen to speak for a session on my passion for audio and how to help podcasters solve the most common audio problems. And as a speaker, we got to be in that like the VIP lounge or whatever it's called, which the Pro Pass people get access to. And I had some of the best conversations in there, just getting snacks and beverages in between sessions and stuff. So that I know that the people that were in there with me really got their money's worth out of that Pro Pass, picking the brains of all the speakers and stuff. But that's where I officially met Evo Terra for the first time, was on the expo floor.
Oh, nice.
And we hit it off. And now I've done 2 projects with him. Like, he's actually paid me to do some audio production stuff for him. Yeah. So I spent my whole time practically either on the expo floor or in that VIP room, just talking with people. I didn't attend as many sessions as I was planning on that I had planned ahead for, like you said. And it was awesome. Like, I kind of regretted missing, there's that session I want to see, but the conversations that I had on the expo floor were fantastic.
Yeah. There's a lot of really good stories, Marcus. You mentioned how you met Evo, and there's so many really crazy stories how somebody met someone, and then that ended up, like you said, creating a business idea, or that created. I mean, you mentioned even She Podcast and Podfest. Like, both of those were events that spawned off of the first podcast movement. And I don't say that to be, vain or anything, but that is true. Like, those people were at podcast movement and, decided to create variations for the podcast community. And then on top of that, I know the guy who's going to MC this year, Matt. He was an attendee at one of our events a few years back, and he met Dr. Drew, who was there at the event. And then he ended up being on Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla's podcast because he met him at Podcast Movement. And I was like, well, that's something that probably wouldn't have happened if he had not been at the event. So there's a lot of little stories like that where people have been featured on platforms like Apple, been major featured because they contacted and at the event they got in touch and connected with Apple, because they're in hallways, they're at that lounge like you're talking about. They're those people that have that access and that influence are there. So, and they can potentially help you if they know you. So get to know them. Like, go say hi. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it's not gonna hurt to be polite and make a friend.
For sure, yeah. I had met Laura Davidson through Adam, who's not on the show tonight. But then we linked up at Podcast Movement. And it was super cool because I got to hang out with the guys that are pushing all the Shure products and behind some of the development. And it's never a bad look to be friends with the oldest microphone manufacturer in the world, and if you're bringing some real value or a friendly conversation, even in, last Podcast Movement too, I met some guys, who throw some masterminds and connected to lots of people. So it was just some really good, enriching and empowering relationships for sure. Just from being present and talking to people. It's kind of interesting, Jared, because I volunteered for you guys because I came in, kind of towards the end. I was in Orlando for 36 hours or something obnoxious, and so I volunteered for a shift and then got a ticket, and I was the handler for Damona Hoffman for her talk. And so I was like, hi, I'm Molly. I'm your, volunteer or whatever. So we did the thing. Well, before, let me rewind. I'm walking up to the event and I see her, and I'm walking down the hallway, and I kind of look over and I see this woman next to me, and I'm like, "You having a good time?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's pretty good. We chatted up. That's how I am. I talk to everybody. I make friends in line, like wherever I go." And so I'm chopping it up with her, and I'm like, "All right, cool. Well, I'll see you later." So then, 3 hours later, I go to help the speaker, and it's that lady. So I'm like, "Oh, what are the odds?" Like the only freaking person I've spoken to at Podcast Movement so far, and it's you. And now I'm your volunteer. And then fast forward to She Podcast. I'm walking in the venue. The first person I see is her. I'm like, okay,
Wow,
Damona,
nice.
this is getting a little weird. I'm like,
Yeah,
am I
what's going
stalking
on
you? Are you stalking me? I don't know the rules of engagement here. And then fast forward 6 months later, I was approached by FreshBooks, who was at the convention, to apply to be the host of their new season of their podcast. So I put together a teaser reel. Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, and then they were like, hey, Molly, we picked a person and we really loved you, but we went with Damona Hoffman. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. What the fuck is going on, man?
Yeah. You had a chance to take her out.
I know.
You should have.
Right.
Son of a bitch. I was like, this is so weird though. You know what I mean? To be at these 1,000-person events, you know what I mean? In Orlando, in Atlanta. I'm just all right, Damona, we either
That can
have
only
to be,
ever happen to you, Molly.
yes, literally. I'm like, we either have to be friends or mortal enemies. There's there's just no other way around it. But
I just don't think we should ever have Damona to any other event.
I know.
Now she's canceled because
She's-
no, she is a very gracious lady. So yeah, if you're gonna miss out, may as well miss out to Damona, or I'll tell myself that.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, she's a pro, man. She's killing it. She doesn't curse as much on podcasts as I do. I don't really blame them for going with her. They were like, we've watched some of your podcasts, and no. But yeah, small world. Well, I think what you guys are doing is great. It's just really important for people to get that connection and hang out with each other and just put the faces to the names and just kind of understand that, it's not just another name on the other side of a keyboard or through a screen. These are real people. And so getting those connections and, podcasting is such a, vulnerable activity. You're putting yourself out there, especially for the passion project, podcasters, they're really putting themselves out there. So I think going to an event like that and getting to meet other people and getting that reassurance, I think it's really helpful. I think it helps spawns a lot more creativity. And I really do like all your tracks too. I love that you focus on business. That's really my jam is, creating successful podcast production companies and, focusing more on how to get that done. And you definitely have a lot of tracks in that mindset, which I think is really important.
Well, Molly, that means a lot coming from you. So we are glad to continue to try to create, and foster this community. And, we're thrilled that you have been gracious to be a part of it. So thank you.
Amen.
And Marcus.
No. Yeah. And Adam too. Adam was there, wasn't he there? Yeah, Adam was there. So yeah, man. So what's going on this year? Are you doing evolutions again, or is tell us more.
The big event that we've mainly been referring to is Podcast Movement, which is this August 3rd through the 6th in Nashville. And then in 2020, we tried a event that was just West Coast in LA called Evolutions, and it was a hit. Surprisingly, we had a couple of ideas of a secondary event, but that's what we went with. And tried something on the West Coast, and then of course this year with the pandemic and stuff, it just wasn't the right thing to do. But we are bringing it back in 2022. It'll be back in March, and
nice.
We're working on that behind the scenes and a lot of potential collaborations with that, and we think that's going to really be a nice event. That's just tip on the West Coast every year, just kind of in the beginning of the year, just focusing more on that audience that may or may not hit up the normal Podcast Movement event because of the distance or whatever. But I think, we're excited about continuing on. And funny story, Molly. I mean, we've had other podcast events worldwide that have come to us, and maybe they've struggled a little bit, or there's various reasons they basically asked us to take them over. And there's been some of those that we've looked at, and there's actually one or two that we've taken on. So here in 2022, we're going to have our first international event. It's an established event already, but we're now going to be running an established event, but it's now a podcast movement event. And it was basically the keys were just handed to us. We didn't have to buy it or nothing.
Wow.
The organization that ran it couldn't, I guess they're nonprofit or something. They couldn't profit from it or something along those lines. And they did it like 2 or 3 years in a row, and it was always profitable. And they're like, we got to have somebody who can make the money, but we'll just help organize it. So we're like, okay, well, we got introduced to them through James Cridlin from Pod News, and started that conversation. So we're going to have our first event in Australia in 2022.
Nice.
Knock on wood. So there's things, and there's others. I won't mention just because I don't want to come across as braggadocious, and also it's not really fully official. But just other things that are opening up. It's like, okay, this is a new thing that we can now participate in and help and continue to see really cool things from. So, but that wouldn't have happened had we not, just really stayed tried and true to, hey, we're going to do the absolute best we can within reason to put on a super high quality event and just try to be as gracious to everybody as we can. And, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but just continue to try to keep that good rapport and good relationship with folks and try to treat others right. And, if we make mistakes, say we're sorry and try to mend the fence and keep going. And I think now we're starting to see the fruit of, really trying to be that way for a long time. So I'm thankful to say that and humbled by that. But yeah, podcast movement is not just an event company. I mean, we're now doing newsletters and some other things that we're doing. So it's more becoming like a media company, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you guys are giving out a lot of valuable information and the daily newsletter and everything else that you're doing. I mean, it's a lot of effort behind that. Well, let me know when you want to do, podcast movement Costa Rica, because we could do that. Just saying.
I'm never against coming to Costa Rica. I've only been once, and I had the time of my life. I went to Tamarindo, I think.
That's where I live.
Seaside town. Yeah. Oh, is that where you are? No way. Okay. So I remember that was just an epic experience. I'll never forget it. So yeah, I'd love to come back. So, Molly, I receive your invite, which I believe is what you're saying. And,
indeed.
Save me a couch.
Indeed. You got it. Well, it's funny because when you mention podcasts around here, the locals are like, "What's a podcast?" And I'm like, "Whoa, that's so crazy! You've never even heard of it before."
I remember people saying that 5 years ago. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And then I'm like, Joe Rogan, and they're like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's even crazier! Like, you guys don't know who Joe Rogan is." I think I want to live in this world a little longer now. Yeah, so it's a fertile market, but it might be a little early, but
I think the Spanish market is, merging. It's coming along. We're excited about it. So we're seeing. This is actually the first podcast we're having a Spanish speaking track.
Oh shit! I didn't realize that. Right on.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We produce a couple
we're having
podcasts.
Presentations that are. Well, then, Molly, we should probably talk because I think we might have 1 or 2 sessions that are still open for that. So
yeah, I can connect you with some great. We produce a couple different podcasts, 3 different podcasts in Spanish, which can be challenging sometimes because our editor doesn't speak Spanish, but we work it out.
That would be challenging.
Yeah,
Yeah. Very cool.
We just edit out all the parts when they say "Ay, Dios mío," because that's when we know something went wrong.
that might. All right, whatever the 5 seconds was before that. Yeah, let's just take it out. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
But that's super important because that's such a huge percentage of the population, and a significant portion of the population that needs more access to information. Quite frankly. So and everybody's walking around with Huawei and Android phones, which is another kind of interesting thing, right? Like where I'm at, nobody's got an iPhone. Very few people have iPhones. Yeah, and so everybody's got Huawei phones, and the routers and stuff are all Huawei, which is interesting because Huawei is sanctioned by the United States because they put tracking devices and spy devices in their equipment, and so you can't even get Huawei
so does
stuff.
TikTok, I think. Yeah, we let that
exactly.
go. So, yeah.
And so you're in Costa Rica. It's like the most remote place. Yet, like somewhere in China, like someone knows exactly where everyone is in the country at all times. I'm like, it's all very deceiving. But
I'm in Costa Rica. It's okay. Yeah, you can know where I am.
You can try. I'm at the bar, give or take.
Yeah,
most of the time. And so, but it's just interesting because people aren't as married to iPhones and Apple and iTunes, right? So it'll be really interesting to what happens when podcasts start to emerge in these like Spanish-speaking countries or countries that are not so, addicted to Steve Jobs' technology, and how that'll change the rankings and stuff, right? Because like so many podcasts are consumed on Apple, but they won't be in Costa Rica, even though they're not really being consumed right now. But when they are, it won't be on iTunes. So I feel like that's an opportunity there for content creators to like focus on more, Spanish content for sure, Spanish language content. If you're a native Spanish speaker, I highly recommend you do that, right? But it'll just really be interesting to see how the industry, changes a little bit or shifts as it moves into new territories and countries that don't really give a shit about Apple,
Yeah,
my kind of place.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah, it's these are things that I would imagine it would be kind of fun for you and I to chat again in 5 years and just kind of laugh about, okay, yeah, like who saw that coming, like
right.
Well, I mean, 5 years ago, I didn't. Some of the stuff that we're seeing now is like, oh, that'd be nice if that would happen, and now it is. It's like, okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to seeing what brands have a presence on the expo floor this year too.
Me too.
Related to that, because 2 years ago, at the last podcast movement I went to, there was Google and Spotify and I can't remember. Well, Shure, because Molly mentioned Shure, but Oxbus was there, and now they've been purchased by Libsyn. It's just interesting how quickly things are changing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the expo floor looks like. Are there any new exciting brands that to you, Jared, are going to be there this year?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's always a few, but one that is we're really excited about is Facebook, because Facebook's starting to do podcasting and some live audio rooms, and so Facebook is sponsoring the new attendee orientation and the society and advocacy track, which is really awesome. So they're going to be there. They're going to have a presence, and it's really interesting to see what Facebook's going to do in terms of audio stuff. And so so that's an example. I mean, there's others, but I mean, we're really pleased to have a chance to work with these major brands now. They look at podcast movement as kind of being, okay, this is a quality group to work with in the podcast space, and so we're seeing a lot more of that than we ever have, and I think that's another testimony of just really trying to be quality and do the right thing, and so here we are seeing some of these folks get on board, and I think you're going to see more of that in the next several years. You'll see more celebrities, you'll see more large organizations kind of embrace podcasting like people would embrace like an Instagram account now. Like, okay, that's just normal. You will see more brands that are doing podcasting because that's what people do. So,
and you guys recently announced one of the you guys recently announced one of the main keynote speakers. It's who is it? Mark Cuban. Right?
Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavericks and from Shark Tank. But Mark's coming not for those reasons, but because he is the founder of a new a social audio app that's Riverside. I'm sorry, not Riverside. Fireside.
Yeah. A lot of sides.
App.com. Yeah, a lot of sides here. No, Fireside, and Fallon, who is she's also kind of leading the charge, and the two of them are going to share some time on stage and talk about that. And, Mark's a really smart guy and has done really well. And for him to be backing this and to believe in this, I think says a lot. And that's an encouraging thing to see someone that committed to the podcast space. And so, we're excited and honored that he's going to be involved, and we've got a couple of other keynotes that are going to be coming up soon that we're going to announce. And we're real excited about this year's lineup. It's going to be a really solid, not just keynote lineup, but just head, top to bottom. I mean, it's a really, really good group of sessions that I think people are going to get a lot out of. So Probably our
Nice.
strongest lineup up to this point. So we've had a lot of really good sessions over the years. So
For sure. So
we've had Marcus. So
That's right.
it's kind of hard to top that. You know what I mean? Where do
it
you
is.
go?
Let's
The fire alarm went off during my presentation, so I did
Oh, no,
something.
yeah. I don't know who did that. I blame Molly. Molly's like, enough of this Demona. I'm pulling the fire alarm. Like,
shut it down.
I know you didn't do that, Molly. I'm not blaming you. Yeah, but
I don't even think I was there that
Yeah.
year, but I'll take it. Whatever.
yeah, somebody pulled the fire alarm, and basically all the sessions had to go outside.
Is that what it was? I did know somebody.
Yeah,
actually- man.
somebody pulled a fire alarm. Yeah,
And then
I
we
bet
all had
you
to
it-
go
Why they
stand
did that,
outside in
but-
the heat.
I bet you it was whoever didn't get picked for that track. They're like, I'll show them.
it could have been. You do what you can, and then some people decide how they're going to pay back. So we survived it, but yeah, Marcus, I think sweated a little bit, and we appreciate you.
I think Dave Jackson was
shirts
talking
after
that
that,
time
so.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't the only one. There's a few of us.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we made it through that, thankfully.
So Jared, I gotta ask you, I'm always thinking about the business side of things and calculating liability in my head. I'm trying to back away from that, but throwing large events, a lot of things people don't think about or don't realize that if they're not on the other side of the table is like how many deposits you put down that are non-refundable, from the business side of things, did the pandemic crush you, or were you able to kind of work some of that out? Were your vendors and stuff reasonable, or are you guys just kind of have to work harder? Because I feel like it's a real testament that you're even able to show up again, and do it, because that's a lot of money, man. Insurance policies that can't always get, there's so much money behind the scenes for just even dumb shit like electricity at the hotel or internet or whatever, right?
Yeah, you're right about that.
You're like, what? How did this happen? So, has that been more of a challenge, or have people been pretty, understanding given the global pandemonium?
No, it's been a combination of everything you just said. So it's you get certain groups that are just super gracious and understanding and flexible, and then you got others that, they decided all of a sudden that they were not top priority, and they want everything to be a certain way. And I think we just try to treat everybody the best we can, and given the circumstances, we try to be listening and helping where we can. And so because we've done that just even before the pandemic, I think a lot of our sponsors specifically were very gracious and saying, okay, let's just take the commitment that we made for 2020 and let's push it forward to 2021. Not everyone did that, but a lot of people did. And, things like that really made a big deal, because if everybody was like, okay, we need that refund immediately, I mean, that would have been we would have survived it, but it would have been a hit that probably would have cost us having to lay people off. And we survived the pandemic. We didn't have to lay anyone off. We
Wow.
had to make some, we had to tighten the belt, so to speak, and cut out some unnecessary things. But we had Evolutions right before the pandemic hit, which was a successful and profitable event. And then we did a virtual event when we couldn't do the live one, which was still a good thing. And that, along with some, government help and things, we still had a decent year. It wasn't, epic, but we made it. And now we're coming into this year, and the people that we're hearing from mostly are excited about Nashville and want to be there and want to be a part of it. And then there's people that can't travel because there are the restrictions and things, but they're wanting to be involved in the virtual option. And so it's been positive. I mean, we're pretty surprised to a degree that more people. Or the response has been so overwhelmingly positive. We thought there might be a lot more people kind of holding back and being like, well, I'm not sure. But for the most part, that's not the case. We're seeing some of that, but not very much. But yeah, the sponsors have been gracious and wonderful. Overall, no complaints. I mean, we could have been in a lot worse situation than we were, and I think we navigated it as best we could, and now we're maybe coming out on the other side of it, I hope. And like I said, that we've got things to look forward to in the future, assuming it's safe, and some other events that we can add on, and some other things that we're going to be involved in, assuming everybody's able to do events again. And but yeah, we're really excited about Nashville, and we anticipate I don't think it'll be as big as Orlando, obviously, but I think it's still going to be super well attended, and people are going to come there and have a really great experience, and that'll kind of get the ball going again.
For sure. I think everybody's just going to be so happy to socialize again. It's going to be it's going to be interesting for sure.
And there's a Jack Daniel's distillery tour if you come early.
Nice. Say no more, fam.
A handful of people get to go on that tour if they sign up quickly. So.
Oh, nice.
Well, it is a dry county, so you don't actually get to taste the product. But
is that true? Okay, well that's
yes. Yes,
I didn't know. I was not aware of that.
County. Maybe it's changed recently with all the new liquor laws that we've gotten. Yeah, but previously you could at least. When friends of mine have gone, you haven't been able to taste any, but they may have changed that now. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Well, when I saw that we were doing that, like I said to Dan, I was like, "Is there any way I can take that day off?" And he's like, "No, you're going to be here with you're going to be here with us moving stuff." I'm like, "I think I'd rather go to the distillery."
And you mentioned doing a virtual component to this one. So this is basically a hybrid event. Is this the first time you're doing both in person and virtual at the same time?
On this level, yes, but 2019 kind of was where we first started dabbling in that. Where we had a portion of the event that was live streaming, not completely. And then we've done other events where actually companies have come in and asked, because they've been to Podcast Movement and they saw the execution of our event was so high quality that they've actually hired our team. So we have a professional services portion of our business now that we didn't have before, where other groups bring us in. So we've done through that. We've done live events and streaming hybrid events for other people. So we are very comfortable and confident going into Nashville to do this now with Podcast Movement, and not just do it, but do it really quality, like do it really nice, and do it in a way where a virtual attendee actually feels like, oh, this isn't, that Zoom fatigue is for, everybody's just so exhausted of that, and I am as well. So it's a conscious effort to, put out something that's really quality and also interactive and not cheesy for the virtual person. So we're excited about it, and that I think is the future for most big events. I think you're going to see that new hybrid.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
I don't think that's going to go away. I think too many people realize this is a good opportunity now, and it can be done. It can be done right. And so.
When the pandemic hit, Marcus and I and some other folks, we've had a lot of conversations about like accessibility and like what the pandemic has done for that. And it's actually been really great in a lot of ways because, accessibility comes in a lot of forms. It's not just, can you afford it? Can you physically travel there? Can you be around that many other people, right? Like, it could be the pandemic. It could be financial reasons. It could be you have kids and a whole life and you just can't take that time, whatever, right? And so I love this idea of making it accessible for everybody, because it is expensive, and there is a good deal of privilege that comes with being able to afford to fly, and pay X amount of dollars and X amount of dollars for the hotel room and X amount of dollars for every bottle of water because you're in a hotel, right? Like all of that stuff adds up. And so, which is great. It should still be available, right? But for the people who can't necessarily get there, I think the hybrid, is just a solid look. I mean, maybe some people just kind of hate people, but they want the information. Like, we got you, man. Like, who can't relate to that a little bit sometimes, right? So, but we were talking about this, and we were, I can't remember who had the idea, but it might have even been Kyle Bondo, but we were just talking about like how cool would it be if there was like regional events. So like if like a listening party kind of a thing where like if you're in Virginia but you can't get to the Podcast Movement, well maybe you could do like a few events, like watch some of the like get a hotel room or like a conference room or something like that kind of a deal, and you could have like a TV on and show some of those tracks and then connect with other people in your region who maybe couldn't leave that area. So I don't know if that's
like to do with sporting events.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea, and we've got a number of those. I think it's just how to execute it the right way and having the right people on board, and we're slowly growing. I think down the road we'll be able to have some variation of that. You mentioned accessibility. Like we also do childcare at Podcast Movement, and not everybody knows that, but like the people that have small kids, they come and like, this is amazing. Like this is,
Hell yeah.
And I'm a parent. I have a daughter, and Dan has 2 kids, and it's like, okay, this is a no brainer. Like let's offer this so we partner with I believe a Helping Hand is the name of the group that we partner with. And we've done this now for a few events, and it's not super well known. Not everybody knows we do it, but we do it, and we get it sponsored, and we try to make it as cheap or free for parents. And it's just been a home run. Like everybody that actually gets involved with that, they're just like, thank you. I wish more events would do this. And so, we're always trying to be innovative and do things that, will benefit those that can either be there or in this case, like you're talking about, those that can't be there, but, can still be involved in a meaningful way.
Yeah, so, I think it's really awesome. Cool. I think that's the future, right? You got to have different price points for people, and, spaces, spaces cost money, right? Like every person that's there, you're paying, in DC, if you, yeah, if you do an event in DC, Events DC gets like a percentage of every ticket you sell, whether they help you or hinder you, right? Which is most likely going to be the, what I'm saying. And they're still taking a piece of that, of every single slice of the pie. And so, there's so many
union labor, Molly. I know how you love that.
Yeah, man. I mean, well, so my bloodline, actually, we came from Ireland because of the potato famine, and some of us landed in Scranton and like Pittsburgh, and we were union starters. And so I don't know if you remember the day of the rope when they in Pittsburgh, when they hung like 11 guys who were like, but they were they were like, hey, you're treating people poorly and would like kill them. So I mean, it was a little aggressive for sure, but my people were all about starting unions and getting better working conditions for the coal miners, because there was like coal barons and stuff. And yeah, it was one of the darkest days in history. They were like, yeah, we don't like you, and they hung 11 people in a mass hanging at one time.
Jeez.
They call it the day of the rope.
No, unions are great until you have to be the one to write the check, and then it's like,
You're like, son of a.
But no, I have no issues with unions. Let the record reflect that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, I have no issue with internet at hotels until I have to pay for the bill, and I'm like, what?
I know. Yeah.
Like as a vendor, I'm like, what? But it's 21. I don't understand. No, I mean, it's a lot. But I think that's a smart move to always have the hybrid. I think it's really important, and it just gives, at the end of the day, Podcast Movement is about getting information to people, empowering people, and so, whether they're there or not, right? You hope they're there, but if not,
right?
At least you can pull them into the fold.
No, I totally agree.
Right.
And Marcus mentioned this earlier, but we started the initiative for the Podcast Movement University this year, and really that's just kind of an archive of a lot of presentations and a lot of video tutorials and things like that. Where
nice.
That's free. Somebody can just opt in with their email and have access to this. I mean, this insane library of just all kinds of content, and that's found at university.podcastmovement.com. So it's and we really have gone the extra mile, I think, to have things for everybody, even if they say, okay, there's no way I got laid off, there's no way I could ever go to a Podcast Movement. Okay, well, don't worry about going to a Podcast Movement. Just check out Podcast Movement University. Be involved in the Facebook group. Just read some of these articles through the newsletter. Hopefully that's going to be something that's helpful to you, and that those are just ways to try to continue to give back and pay it forward. And eventually some of those people down the road, they get stable, and then they want to participate and want to support, and they do. So, we don't expect that, but when that happens, that's really cool. So
that's awesome.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you had one piece of advice to give people on how to get their speaker submissions accepted, and this is not like a passive aggressive question, I just want to go on record.
I submitted 3 this year, for the record.
This is
but I'm not bitter.
But what's the secret? There's no secret code, but right? Because when I'm trying to put these things together, which I hate doing, because I just want somebody to tell me, like, what does your audience want, and then I can craft it around that.
My least favorite part of this work. I hate this part.
I can only imagine. So but if you had to give somebody like a couple pro tips on like what, because I'm like, how do I provide value? What is nobody else talking about? And how do I not talk about how women are somehow suffering from imposter syndrome? Those are the three things I don't, And so,
I'm not goshing because I think that's a bad topic. I think it's a good topic, but I feel your pain.
Right.
What I would suggest, and these are really fair and good questions. So what I think is especially a priority for a lot of events that are paying attention, not just in the industry of podcasting, but just overall, is they're wanting to be more diverse. And so I think if you're a white male, for example, I think it would be wise if you submitted a topic and you include a woman or a podcaster of color, someone in your presentation where it's not just you, and nothing against your expertise, but it's really just an opportunity now to have a more diverse speaker lineup, because that matters to a lot of people. It's important. So I think that's one thing that somebody might not think of right away. Just say, okay, it's no big deal for me to share the stage and have Stacy be on here. Yeah, I'm throwing out a random name. But I think that's one way to consider it, is maybe including someone other than yourself that's would be helping the overall conference accomplish that goal. Not that your topic has to be that. Another thing for Podcast Movement specifically is we always have a need for technical sessions. I don't know why, but we get a ton of marketing, we get a ton of monetization, a ton of creation, but we really don't get a lot of technical. And there's a number of people that just want that.
Right.
And so I think that's the biggest opportunity missed is if there's a way to take that topic that's in your head and make it more technical, consider applying for the technical side, because that really does increase the likelihood of you being accepted. Although there are no promises, because we might get 700-800 submissions, and then there's only 100 that we can even fill. So it's a lose situation for us no matter what.
For sure.
And it breaks my heart to be writing to people and be like, hey, we think we thank you, and we didn't have room for you. It's like, oh my God, I don't. Who am I to tell this person that their expertise is not good enough for our stage? That's ridiculous. So I hope that we'll continue with new events and with the Podcast Movement University, we'll continue to find ways to showcase people that should be showcased and have really something valuable to share. And just for whatever reason, we didn't have a stage in Nashville for it. So I'm hoping we'll continue to find ways to work that out. But those are a couple of ideas right there. I know that's not perfect, but those are a few things to consider regardless of Podcast Movement. Just start thinking about, what is it that the conference is trying to accomplish? And a lot of conferences are trying to be more diverse in things. So maybe your session can be you and someone else doesn't look like you, doesn't talk like you, and share the stage and position it that way and propose like a co-presentation. And you might be surprised. That might actually be the one thing that pulls it over and separates you from the mountain of other people that don't do that. So
for sure. Right. Because I think when we're talking about diversity, I liken it to a barbecue, right? Like, nobody wants to go to a barbecue and everybody brought hot dogs, you know what I mean? And that's not a reference on gender. That's just like, you don't want all hamburgers. You don't want all baked
But in the podcast space, it could be.
Right? You just, it's not a good barbecue if everybody brings the same stuff. You can't have a good barbecue with 32 bags of Doritos. You know what I mean? Like, you can have,
well, I can.
You can form an eating disorder. I know. I was like, actually, if they were those purple bag
the Dorito
ones,
analogy is not ideal, but
But it's diversity of thought, it's diversity of experience, diversity of perspective. It's diversity comes in so many different forms too, right? And I think probably one of the more interesting panels would be like if you put two people on stage that like completely disagreed with one another.
Oh, totally.
Yes.
We've turned down speakers that were too polarizing. And I was like, I said to Dan, like, no, we should have that person. And he's like, this is gonna. deeply anger a lot of people if we have this person. And
that's good marketing.
You know, that's one of the challenges that you run into. Is like, why wouldn't we have him or her just because their, you know, agenda is different from some other people? And they're like, but if you put them on there, people are going to boycott. They're going to be like, we're not coming. And it's true because we've had it happen. In 2015, we got an opportunity to have Glenn Beck as a keynote speaker, and he was just going to talk about his media stuff. It wasn't going to be political. It wasn't going to be anything, and people freaked out. Like, we will not support Glenn Beck. We will not, you know, and he ended up dropping out because he had like some vocal thing. And we ended up replacing him with Mark Maron, which I guess was a pretty decent replacement. But I'll never forget that. I was like, I would imagine most people in the community would have been more willing to hear what this guy has to say. He went and started this. He's more radical now, but back then he was you know, starting this whole media thing and online by himself. And it was like, okay, this is pretty interesting, but people didn't care. They're just like, nope, we're not listening to this guy.
But if
those are things you run into as an event, huh?
Yeah. But if, like you said earlier, if you can have them on stage with somebody like Molly was saying with a different
like
perspective.
A total, yeah.
So it's not just a keynote of them. So it doesn't feel like you're showcasing them directly. You're opening up to this discussion. You know, that would be cool. I would pay money.
I want to let Podfest or She Podcast do that first, and then we'll probably copy them. Let's see how it works for them. Then we'll try it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because man, the vocal minority will show up if you press the wrong button. So,
right.
Sure.
You got to be conscious of you know, certain people are willing. We have I'll share an example. So we have a speaker that's from a conservative Christian organization, and he's not going to be on stage talking about any of that. He's going to be talking about podcasting, and his organization has a lot of experience with podcasting. So we had a number of people message us privately. I'm concerned that you have this speaker, and you know, and I just told him, I was like, look, we know this person personally. He's not going to be, you know, sharing anything on the stage that's not podcast centric. And he's very generous in the community, and you don't have to come to the session. You don't have to support his presentation. Right. But for us to tell him no, just because you don't like him, you know, well, what if that were you? You know, what if we told you no because there's some people that don't agree with you? Like we kind of have to, you know, play both sides a little bit. Not you know, and so I It's a challenge. It really is. It can be exhausting at times because you can't make everybody happy. And I think, you know, we just do our best to try to say, okay, you know, these are the rules. Please play within the rules. And most people do. And then it works out okay. So.
I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like, being on stage at a big podcast convention, it just can't be for everybody all the time, right? You know what I mean? Like, right. It should be an honor. It should be something you work up to. Like, just because you're an excellent athlete doesn't mean you're going to the Olympics every time, right? There's people that try to go to the Olympics a bunch of times, failed, made it in the 7th attempt. I don't know if that's true or not, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
that'd be 28 years, so that might not be true.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like it's too long of a window there, but saying the intention, you know, but you know, you don't always get it, right? Like usually when I apply to speak someplace, I get accepted, right? And then when I don't, I'm like, well, I gotta step up on my game a little bit. That's it, right? Like that's it. Like it doesn't make me, you know what I mean? Like feel bad about you. I'm like, oh, there must be some really quality speakers on deck this year, right? And I think, you know, because it's a small community, like there is a sense of entitlement sometimes, and like it's okay if you don't make everybody happy when it comes to the speaker submissions. You know what I mean? Because that's just, that means it's working, right? It's like Studio 54. They didn't let everybody in, man, you know, or it wouldn't have been Studio 54.
It's not an elitist mindset. It really isn't. I feel awful. I tell Dan every year, I'm like, Dan, I hate doing this part. Can we just like have other people do it? And like,
how did you get stuck with that part? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the only one. There's a group of us that you know, all kind of, you know, gauge all the presentations submitted, and then, you know, based on that, you know, we figured it out. on a number of criteria. So and there's a number of sessions that I picked that I'm like, okay, this is a good one, and doesn't make it, and so that,
right.
So I've had people, hey, Jared, I thought we were cool. You're like, well, we're cool, but that
doesn't mean anything. Well, and that's what I mean. Like, it's not an elitist thing. It's just more like, no, man, there's a level of quality, and like maybe you just didn't get it in this year, right? Like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? Your job isn't to like make everybody happy there, right? Your job is to make everybody happy that shows up and provide an excellent experience, right? But like, not everybody gets a microphone, and that's just how it is. I think it makes you want to do a better presentation the next time, right? Like, you need a little humble pie. It's not a bad thing. So, but I feel for you. That's got to be a really shitty part.
There's certain organizations that have been sponsoring and supporting since day one, and people will be like, well, this person speaks every year. Well, that's kind of why is this person.
Yeah, they're paying to be there.
I mean, they're a sponsor, and they've been supporting this thing a long time, and they happen to know what they're talking about. So they kind of got a spot, and it's not to slight you. It's just they're on board, and they're supporting, and so that's part of the deal. So that's not just podcast movement. That's probably
every event.
I'm sure you dealt with that in the music stuff. People
Absolutely.
that are actually supporting, they're going to have an opportunity, and some people get that. Some
it's like everybody that wants to get on guest lists, and I'm like, that's cool, but you could also pay to get in.
Well, imagine trying to get on a guest list in Nashville where all the record labels are, all the management companies, the band's family. Like every time we were like, there's nobody getting on the guest list in Nashville.
Your friends with the drummer doesn't work in Nashville. Right?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm supplying the weed? That might
well, actually, we'll let you in. Come on in, Molly.
Got a
she said she had it. She said.
No, but I joked earlier about, I submitted 3 topics and I did this year, and I was incredibly disappointed, of course, but I totally understood. No, I totally understood because every year I just wanted to voice this, because for those who are bitter that might be listening to this, unlike me, this is one of the world's biggest podcasting events, if not the biggest.
Right.
Every year there's going to be more and more submissions.
Right.
What I figure is, A, I'm not a big enough name. I'm not. I just know I'm not. B, I'm sure that there were other topics that were similar to mine that did have a better person to present it, and I'm totally cool with that, especially being a half-white dude, But anyway,
I love how you threw the half in there.
What? I just thought of one other thing, Molly. I'm going to share this because this is something that just came to my mind. Another thing to consider is if you've done the same talk at another event, whether it's podcasting or not, because we saw a lot of that. We saw someone who's a really good speaker, and any other time we would have been like, hey, you. But that topic had already been talked about on another similar event, like just this year. And it was like, okay, if we pick them and they do the same topic, like that really doesn't differentiate our experience from these other ones. And that may not, someone may not get that. They may be like, well, I was good enough for this event, but now I'm not. Well, you got to diversify. It's okay to have the same speakers, but it may not be okay to just repurpose that same talk that you did at this other thing. And we see that a lot. And then there's other people that are like a business person. Molly comes in and says, I'm going to do a topic on business, and be like, well, this is a podcast conference, so it's got to be podcast centric. So can it be like a business for podcasters? So some of the topics are just like these canned topics that are just like, okay, you shared that at CU Podcast. I saw that on the list.
Yeah.
So if we pick you and you do the same thing, now we just like, we don't really create an experience that's specific just for the people that are attending this event. And so that's something else that organizers look at. And it has nothing to do with Marcus's 3 sessions weren't quality. Maybe Marcus went and did a couple of those sessions on these other events, and I'm throwing you under the bus because you probably didn't do this, but
I deserve.
But I'm just saying that I'm not saying you did this, Marcus. I'm just saying that happens. So that's another thing to keep in mind is when you're submitting something, try not to just totally come up with the same thing you just did. because they look at that. They look at that and say,
For
okay, this
sure.
person is speaking at other events. That's great. That's what we want. But now that topic is kind of exhausted a little bit because they've already done it. So
I
maybe
do.
we need something a little bit different, a new spin on it, something, or
Yeah.
a new
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah. And that's a word of advice for a lot of the podcasters that I serve, that are clients of mine, that are public speakers. They tend to have like a set list of topics that they talk about, and that doesn't fly after a while. Especially after you've already done it publicly, you got to keep evolving. You got to keep coming up with fresh stuff. And with podcasting, there's plenty of opportunity because podcasting is constantly changing. You know, it's growing so fast. You shouldn't have any problem finding something new to talk about.
That's yeah. I'm glad that this came up because that's something I don't know that people get is it's okay to have that topic, but if you're going back to the same event year after year, you're gonna have to diversify a little bit. You're gonna have to switch it up, and maybe one of the ways to switch it up is you have a different topic and you invite someone else on the stage with you.
That's
just
a great idea.
Little things to switch up and not have the same thing every time because event organizers look at that. So, but in no way, I hope does anyone feel like, okay, this conference didn't pick me, so therefore I'm not up to par or I'm not good enough. I don't think that's true at all. I think that we get so many really good presentations and we just don't have room, and it breaks my heart when I have to tell somebody that. Like, I don't want to tell them that. I don't want to, because I don't think we're holier than thou and that we're too good for them. Like, that's not true at all. That's just the unfortunate, situation of not having enough stages and only having so much time. But we're hoping to continue to build and find ways to showcase people because, there's so much good people out there that have really good insights and they should be heard. And hopefully we can continue to find ways to help them share that. So
cool.
Next year, I'm going to present how I found my mortal enemy, Damona Hoffman, at Podcast Movement, and I'm going to ask her to join me on
if
stage.
you and Damona do like a co-presentation, I'm sure that would get selected. Just because I know this backstory, I could go to the team and be like, "No, you got to pick this one."
You don't understand.
There's some history here. This is good.
I mean, I'm hoping she'll do it with me. She might turn me down like FreshBooks.
Oh, FreshBooks. You're a little up the ladder now.
I was like, whatever. I don't like accounting anyway.
Right.
Just kidding. I love you guys.
You would think it's a lot easier to be humble when you have FreshBooks backing you, but maybe not. So
I know. I wouldn't know what that's like. Oh man. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Molly.
This is super helpful, and hopefully our 8 listeners, found some value in it as well.
We love all 7 of them. Marcus's mom, we love her too. But
that's right. That's right.
Well, 4 of them are here right now, so that
okay, good.
But you'll definitely see us. We're trying to convince Adam to come down too, but it's he runs like a brick and mortar music shop that his family's owned for 6 years, and so he it's hard for him to go to dinner, never mind to Memphis or Orlando. But we're trying to convince him to come. But I'm going to book a flight in the next couple weeks here and come down and crash on Marcus's Marcus's treadmill. I'm going to bring a pillow and a blanket.
I got a yoga mat.
While it's running, she's going to crash on.
That's how you stay on top of your episodes, people.
That is an episode that will get 10 people, I guarantee it. Molly and Marcus, I really appreciate you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. What an honor, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in person. And even if we don't, just thank you for being a big part of the community and doing really awesome things. So
thanks, man. Well, I'm gonna come.
I'll definitely
bring
be there.
A flask of what is it? What is the brewery? Or
Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels.
Just smuggle it into their own distillery.
Nobody stands sober, okay?
Flash it all over that dry county.
Well, see, if you go to the Jameson distillery, you're not allowed to leave sober, so it's a completely different.
It balances out, right?
Yeah.
Where is that one?
It's in Ireland,
Ireland.
Of course.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why they're not. Okay.
I mean, they're assuming you're
shame on me for not
drunk.
knowing that. I should have known that.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
Awesome. Well, Jared, thank you again for coming on, and we look forward to seeing you sooner than later. Festival's right around the corner, isn't it? Like a month out, huh? Holy crap.
Coming up soon. So if we don't get to hang out, we'll hopefully can stay in touch online. So
yeah,
I'll buy you Jack Daniels.
All right, I accept that offer, Marcus.